We interrupt this programming for a WGN News special report.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sean Lewis alongside Tanya Francisco. At this hour, a military honor guard is preparing to escort the body of the late Congressman John Lewis across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where he helped lead a march for black voting rights in 1965.
Known as Bloody Sunday. Now, this is part of a week-long celebration to honor Congressman Lewis's life, his work. Tributes are taking place in 5 cities linked with key moments in his life. The honor started yesterday with an emotional farewell in his hometown of Troy, Alabama. People there called him the boy from Troy and revered him as a hero. Now, here is the look at the schedule of events honoring the life of John Lewis. He will make his final crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in a procession. Then he will lie in state in the Alabama State Capitol. The public is allowed to pay tribute while wearing face coverings, and a public viewing is scheduled for Monday and Tuesday in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda.
Final tributes are Wednesday, Thursday in Atlanta, where he will then be buried. Joining us is Dr. Carol Adams, former president. We don't have Dr. Adams right now. What we do have, though, is a conversation that we had with Father Michael Pfleger. He knew the congressman quite well. We talked with him earlier today.
Yeah, we are working to get that sound from Father Pfleger.
John Lewis, with all his greatness and his great accomplishments and his tremendous voice, as you said, a conscience to the Congress, was always such a humble man. So very humble, and always the source of his strength and his courage was his faith. He never, ever reflects in any way from deeping from his faith of being sure and being clear to everybody that I do what I do because of my faith, which is what Dr. King said the whole movement was built out of his faith. I think the other thing that struck me about him all his life was his willingness to sacrifice. John Lewis and the people of the civil rights movement, whether C.T. Vivian and Martin, of course, Malcolm and Rosa and Medgar and so many others, they were willing to die for something beyond themselves and their own family. They were willing to die because of a belief in justice and because of a belief of freedom and equality for all people, and no matter what that cost. I remember one time when we were going to integrated school, a group of us here in Chicago, and they asked a question before we got on the bus: are you willing to die today? And if you're not, don't get on the bus. And I think that's a question we've got to come back into grips with in 2020. Do we believe in what we believe enough for justice or righteousness or peace to be willing to die for what it is we believe? So I think it was his faith. I think it was his willingness to care and to sacrifice for others. That those are qualities that are so precious and that made him so precious to so many people. And I think that's what we've got to grab hold of today if we're going to really make a transformative change in this country.
Again, that was Father Michael Pfleger, who was a friend of Congressman John Lewis. Now, this is a live look at the crowds that are gathered at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. And for those of you who are not familiar with Representative John Lewis, he was 80 years old. He died on July 18th after announcing in December of 2019 that he was suffering from pancreatic cancer. He was an icon of the civil rights movement as a young man involved in student organizing and activities, like to get into what he called good trouble.
And a lot of that good trouble then going through the generations. Joining us now on the phone, Tyrone Stoudemire, VP of Global Diversity and Inclusion at the Hyatt Corporation. Tyrone, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Recently, Hyatt honored John Lewis. It was in February. Tell me about what John Lewis meant to you and really what he meant to Hyatt, because there's some history going back decades.
Yes, thank you so much. And it was really an honor to recognize all of the great work that he and Sonola Clayton and Andrew Young, C.T. Vivian, and Reverend Jackson have did in 1965 during civil rights. Was really the beginning of Hyatt Hotel Corporation based in Atlanta, Georgia. And during that time of civil rights, it was where hotels were not allowed. Dr. Martin Luther King to have his combined luncheons and meetings. And we were the first hotel to provide that space for Dr. Martin Luther King. And that has been a part of our DNA for many, many years. It's a conception of Hyatt Hotel Corporation in Atlanta, Georgia. And we still celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King and Andrew Young and Sonola Clayton and Jesse Jackson there. In February, we held our Global Inclusion Council meeting in Atlanta at the Civil Rights Human Rights Museum, where we honored those four giants. And to be able to have time with him as a diversity practitioner to really understand how civil rights came about and why it was important that we come and honor those differences and civil rights and human rights. It's important for us to continue that work in corporate America. And all of them, especially John Lewis, was very kind and humble, but thought that the fight needed to be done with courage, and we need to be courageous and continue to stay on the fence to fight for civil rights and human rights. And I am honored to have known him and blessed and grateful to be able to continue the work of those giants from civil rights to make sure that we're creating inclusion and diversity and equity within our workplace and our marketplace and in our communities.
You referred to him as a giant, but many people who know him, as you pointed out, say he was a humble man. Kind of describe his demeanor for someone who has such a great legacy of making change in this country. He was still quite humble.
He was a very humble giant, as he's been articulated that. He was a quiet storm. He was very deliberate and intentional of how he communicated, how we need to work across our differences and honor and respect one another. And he often talked about that there were a few good white people that was on this journey that gave their lives for us, and we need to work collectively across these differences. His humble and meek spirit allowed him to enter into conversations and dialogues that most men and women couldn't enter into. He was very calm, collected, and very centered and focused on we have to get here together. We have to unite as one. We have to honor and respect one another. He said, get into trouble, get into good trouble. Be disruptive in a way that we can change society.
What does this mean, Tyrone, to see this civil rights icon, someone who was just a young man when he started to preach that good trouble to the world, and people started to listen? What does it mean now that we're saying goodbye and seeing the legacy and how the country is responding to his legacy?
His legacy will live on through us. He's a part of our DNA. The fight and the effort that he put towards the African American Museum in Atlanta, that history is there. We celebrate that history. We'll continue to celebrate him. Gone but never forgotten. I have been inspired and been encouraged and empowered to move just the envelope a little further. We all have a commitment to make. We all should come together and work together to make sure that we keep his legacy alive.
And particularly, I would say, the young people, because John Lewis was a young man when he started his work.
He was quite young when he started his work, and he continued to do it until the day he died. And I think the encouragement that he gave us during this global pandemic and this civil unrest with police officers to continue to stay in the fight, continue to hold true to what we believe in, that we're all human, we all deserve to be given the same treatment as everyone else. So his work will continue on. And you have to keep in mind, he was arrested more than 40 times for the effort of trying to bring mankind together, to respect and honor differences. He was a champion for all, and he will be with us for all. That he's in our DNA. He's a part of why I continue to fight as a diversity practitioner to ensure that we're creating an environment where everybody can thrive and strive, regardless of their racial background, their orientation, their height, their weight. No matter what it is, if we come together, we are better together than we are independently.
All right, Tyrone Sotomayor from Hyatt Corporation, thank you so much for joining us.
Well
we appreciate
said.
it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
All right. Real quickly, before we move on, I want to talk a little bit about what's going to take place today during this ceremony. First of all, there will be an Armed Forces body bearers. They will place Representative Lewis's body on a horse-drawn carriage, and then we will hear opening remarks from the Alabama Congresswoman Terry Sewell, a longtime mentee of Representative Lewis. There will be a musical selection and then another prayer, and then the horse-drawn carriage will depart from Brown Chapel through the streets of Selma, and then there will be the final crossing of that Edmund Pettus Bridge. Almost so symbolic of that Sunday morning when a group of young people decided to cross the bridge as they fought for the right to vote back in the 1960s. 60s. Then Alabama State Troopers will transfer that body back to the hearse, and then the hearse will depart for the Alabama State Capitol, where John Lewis will lie in state for the rest of the evening.
This is a live picture right now from Selma, Alabama, as we await that crossing, the final crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge by those honoring the late Congressman John Lewis. Now, earlier this morning, we spoke to Pastor Reginald Sharp.
I am from Georgia, so I know very well the work that Congressman John Lewis has done throughout the years. His life has been a symbol of longevity, humility, and a passion for eternal values. And so his passing really marks the ending of an era, a person who put blood, sweat, tears, and his own physical body on the line for justice, fighting for human rights, voting rights, civil rights. And so when I tell you we have lost a mighty tall oak, a mighty oak has fallen, it's a reminder that you do not have to be aged and wrinkled face in order to make an impact in our nation. Dr. King was 39 when he passed. Malcolm X never reached 40. And even Congressman John Lewis did so much in Montgomery and Selma before his 30s or his 40s. And so I'm inspired that young people still have a responsibility to carry the mantle of justice in this country. And I think we're seeing that right now in the passing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and some other lives that have been lost. It's the young people that are going to have to pick up the mantle because they're fearless, they're energetic, and they're focused.
Now you can see the crowds outside in Selma, Alabama, awaiting the procession here across the bridge. Tanya, when you look at the number of lives touched by this one person, the conscience of the Congress, as he was called, you know, when you're a member of Congress, you're one of 435, but he kind of stuck out, just across all barriers, across the aisle, someone who was deeply respected for what he believed in. 17
terms. You don't get elected to 17 terms without making a statement while you're there in Congress. More than 30 years serving the people of the state of Georgia. Also, you know, it was very interesting about the crowd that's gathered here. The family of John Lewis had asked that they wear face coverings, and you see that even there in the state of Alabama, where some have resisted, everyone out there is wearing facial coverings. There are a lot of people gathered. A lot of this will be carried live or streamed on some sort of device, so people could have stayed home, but they felt the need to be out there to witness this historic moment. Now, I want to point out that this is part of a 6-day celebration of Congressman Lewis's life and legacy. It spans from Georgia to Alabama to then to Washington, D.C. Yesterday, we had the celebrations in his hometown of Troy, Alabama. Today, we have the celebrations and memorials marking his time in Alabama, of course, crossing the bridge there in Selma. Monday and Tuesday, his casket will travel to Washington, D.C. There will be a ceremony at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. He will lie in state there on Monday and then on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, his body will travel to Atlanta, and there will be a ceremony at the Georgia State Capitol Rotunda. He will lie in state there on Wednesday. And then Thursday, there will be a private funeral service. It will take place at Ebenezer Baptist Church Horizon Sanctuary, and he will have a private burial as well. The life of a man whose life almost has come full circle, because a lot of the work that he was doing as a young man, fighting for rights and for change in this country, are now taking place again with the young people across the country who are trying to bring about change in the way people view their thoughts on this country, and how it was founded and how it moves forward and how it continues on into the future.
And now you have like this third generation now of activists, very strong in their beliefs, going around the country and saying, hey, things still need to change.
Sure, we're not done yet.
We're not done yet.
And one of those people who fought back then was Dr. Carol Adams, who is joining us on the phone now. Dr. Adams, thanks for spending some time with us. I remember speaking to you years ago, and you were telling us about your time with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Were you working tightly with Representative Lewis, or was he a little bit before you? I can't remember that part.
He was a little before me, and what we had in common was not SNCC, it was CORE. I became involved in CORE as a teenager at 16 years old.
Okay, yeah.
And so we had that in common because it was through CORE that he did the Freedom Rides. I was still in high school then. I followed he and Diane Nash at Fisk. They had blazed a trail there.
Yeah.
And I was in the class following, and they really energized just generations of Fiskites to continue in that tradition. So I got involved again in the civil rights movement there. So we had that. We had Fisk University in common because he was a student of Fisk and one of our sons and daughters that stayed on the altar. And we had Reverend C.T. Vivian in common, who was the person that got me re-involved in civil rights in Nashville.
And what a lot of people don't really understand about student organizing is there was a lot of organizing involved. It wasn't just one day you got up and you picked up, signs and you went out and protest. You had to understand how to do it, how to go about it, and how to be effective in getting your message out there.
Well, you had to train. There was training that you had to submit to. You had to agree to conduct yourself in a particular way. There was a philosophy behind this, and they didn't want people going out just acting any kind of way. If you couldn't commit to that, then you weren't to get involved. It's just like Congressman Lewis said at one time. They said to him on the bus, if you're not willing to die, don't get on this bus. And he showed us time and time again that he was willing to put his life on the line for all of us because he suffered so much brutality. Yeah. Some of us who were involved in the civil rights movement were arrested, but we never had the kind of brutal beating and the things that Congressman Lewis endured.
I remember hearing an interview with Diane Nash, and she said every time that she would come to a meeting, John would always have bandages. on his on his head from some type of altercation he had been involved in.
Yeah, because he put his life on the line, and they were determined to diminish his spirit all the way to the ultimate. I mean, there are people who did literally die, which is why these 55 years later, we have to honor their legacy through our own actions, not through just watching TV, but what do we do because we knew him and because we experienced him.
Dr. Adams, it's interesting to note with John Lewis, he's a special kind of guy because not only did he have to endure those beatings and brutality in his younger life, but then he spent decades in Washington, which I've been there, and it's a place where you can get you can get pretty cynical very quickly if you spend too much time in Washington, D.C. But he always maintained that optimistic view of the world.
Well, he had this moral center, this spiritual part about him that you would feel if you were in his presence. And it's no accident that they called him the moral conscience in an environment that is often rife with corruption and what have you. His moral compass was strong. He was an humble man. He loved everyone. He understood that love was what would conquer hate. He believed this to the very core of his being, and he radiated that through his actions and through his words.
What are your thoughts on part of his legacy, this 6-day basically goodbye tribute that's going through, that he makes this final crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge?
Well, I always think about him as a bridge over troubled water. And water and crossing is such a metaphor for us moving to the other side. And we said, even in our spirituals, we want to get to the other side. Many rivers to cross. All of those metaphors that talk about movement, moving forward, and getting over one thing into something else. And so I think it is the symbolism of this one last crossing is so significant. His second book, Cross the Bridge, he's again crossing that, and he's taking us with him.
What's interesting is to see the protests that have happened over the last almost 2 months now across the country, and to see these faces. They are young faces. Their parents weren't even born the first time that John Lewis crossed the Pettus Bridge in Selma in 1965. What can these young activists learn and take from what generations prior, including John Lewis's, have done and set the foundation for?
They will learn from him that this is a long run, that it is a struggle, that is a distance run, not a sprint, and that you have to stay engaged and stay involved and not think that small wins mean you have really won the fight and the struggle for freedom. We are still very much engaged in it. And then some of the things he fought for all of those years ago, we are still fighting for them today.
Did you think that we became complacent? Is that why this fight continues, what, 55 years later?
I think the fight takes different forms and we have to keep reinventing how we're going to fight it. You know, I believe that, yes, some people may have thought we won, but in the main, the real activist community has remained engaged. The fight just changes and we have to recalibrate. So I'm excited about what young people are doing now. I'm excited about the energy, the re-energization or energization of the movement, if you will, that has people once again realizing that we have to do this. And I think we can celebrate John Lewis in 100 days by going to the polls, because he took many a beating trying to get us that right to vote.
When we're talking about that right to vote, it's hard to believe that it was just 55 years ago that you had to say in a law that American citizens had the right to vote, and we take that that now as something that we just have. But what do we take from here now? We have it now codified in law, but it almost seems like this is a fight now for the hearts of Americans.
And also, we have to fight against voter suppression, because there are many states now where you're seeing efforts to keep people from voting. We have folks, even now in the time of COVID, actively campaigning against being able to vote absentee, including our current president. We've got places where they're coming up with all kinds of means tests and things you have to do. It's almost like going back to how many jelly beans are in a jar and all the idiotic things they used to ask Black people in the South around voting. So now we have to fight to maintain our rights. Everything we've got to fight to keep. And everything we don't have, we have to fight to get.
And as John Lewis would say, do it by getting into good trouble.
That's right.
Getting into
That's
good trouble.
Recognize that legacy is a verb in this situation.
Oh, wow.
What will be going through your mind, Doctor, as you see this final crossing of John Lewis?
Yeah. I think the thing that first touches my heart is I say, I should have gone there. It makes you want to be there. It makes you want to be a part of it. To just action again, to activate your feelings about the significance of this man, the importance of his work. He would be very humble about 6 and 7 days worth of recognition, because no matter what and no matter how much people praised him, he was always a very humble human being.
Well, Dr. Carol Adams, we appreciate you joining us this morning and sharing your thoughts and observations.
It was an honor.
And we wish you much health and safety, and be blessed this morning, okay?
Thank you so much. It's an honor to talk about Congressman Lewis.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. We continue to await the ceremony. Just a little while ago, we saw the horse-drawn carriage that will be carrying Congressman Lewis's body across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. There you see the Armed Forces body bearer standing by, presumably waiting to place his body onto that horse-drawn caisson, as they say. And then from there, we'll be hearing opening remarks from Alabama Congresswoman Terry Sewell.
You know what's amazing here, Tanya, is we have members of Congress die from time to time while they're still in office. Rarely do you ever see an outpouring of support honoring someone of Congress, and that shows just how deeply loved he was in the halls of Congress, respected by both parties for his time prior to becoming a politician when he was an activist. And this shows kind of a progression of what activism can be. It goes from being an activist, speaking out, and then going in and starting to make changes within the laws of the country, and that is what John Lewis's legacy is.
Many politicians did start out as organizers, as we know. Our former President Barack Obama was a community organizer here in the city of Chicago. So yeah, activism is where you get your start, and you take it as far as it will take you. So again, we are watching now as Congressman John Lewis's body is being moved to the horse-drawn caisson by the Armed Forces body bearers.
The honor guard. An honor for him. Let's just take a moment to watch this quietly.
Mark time. Bears. Hold. Left wheel. 5 side steps. March. Forward. March. Bears. Hold. One side step, mark. Ready, step. Right, left, face. Forward, hard.
Again, we are watching the procession in the caisson of John Lewis's body as it heads towards the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, where 55 years ago he was part of a group that were trying to cross the bridge in the fight for the right to vote here in this country, and they were met head on with brutality and it was called Bloody Sunday because of how brutal the beating was that they took in this effort. So from here, the horse-drawn carriage is leaving Brown Chapel. It will march through the streets of Selma and make that final crossing across the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
It's of note, of course, that Bloody Sunday happened on a Sunday. John Lewis was met with resistance, along with so many others, and today, another Sunday, and he is crossing this bridge for a final time and being honored for that act of bravery, really, 55 years ago.
By law enforcement,
Yeah.
ironically. The same law enforcement, not the exact same people, but law enforcement bodies that he met with such brutality. It's interesting, I was in Memphis for the 50th anniversary marking the assassination of Dr. King. And the night before, there was a tribute, and Ambassador Andrew Young got up and spoke, and he talked about Selma that particular day and how that march was actually supposed to take place on Monday and not Sunday, and that they were there just eyeing out, just taking a look at the scene and figuring out how everything was going to work, and they saw a group of young people marching. And they said, oh, wait, this was supposed to happen on Monday. And then they saw them being met by the law enforcement, and they actually joined in. So Bloody Sunday was actually not meant to happen on Sunday. It was meant to happen on Monday for that march to take place. And it was just interesting to hear those stories from back then, and to get an understanding of what was actually going on, and to hear that this march was not actually supposed to take place on the day, and it is now such a part of history in this country.
And of course, those protests, many of them turning violent because they were met with resistance from law enforcement and many others for voting rights. Today we are seeing other protests, some of them also turning violent, and they aren't about voting rights, but they are about human rights. They're about what John Lewis preached about for years. And when we look at this bridge and know the history that surrounds it, and know the history of the name behind it, and the movement now that we have for changing the name of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, you wonder what is going through the minds of John Lewis's family, knowing his place in history and where it falls when it comes to this bridge in this city.
Now, looking at this bridge, it looks as though those are rose petals, maybe?
Yeah, those look like rose petals to me.
Rose petals there that have been placed on the bridge for the crossing there. Now, it is of note, we should note that he has crossed this bridge in many times
Just
since.
5 years ago,
Yeah.
60th anniversary.
For the anniversary.
With President Obama.
Yes, of the crossing there. But this will be his final crossing, and we are watching as many of the vehicles prepare to cross. But again, Representative John Lewis's body is in a horse-drawn carriage. So many people have lined along the routes there, family asking them not to come out, but if they did come out, that they please wear masks in light of COVID-19. And you can see many have lined the streets there in Alabama, in Selma, Alabama, to watch this historic moment, this final crossing of John Lewis's body across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. That, as you point out, there is a process now, or a call for the bridge to be renamed in his honor.
When you take a look at this, and you realize, of course, in the context of having a pandemic, and the fact that we need to social distance from one another, you can only imagine what the outpouring would be if it weren't for the fact that so many of us have to kind of stay away and stay remote and stay distant and watch this from afar, from TVs and from phones and from mobile devices. But still, you have a good contingent there of people lining the roadway to pay their respects.
John Lewis, 80 years old, died July 18th.
Just 7 months after he announced that he had pancreatic cancer.
Pancreatic cancer, known as the conscience of Congress, served 17 terms, 34 years in Congress. As a matter of fact, anyone interested in knowing more about the life of John Lewis, he participated in a documentary that was just put out on July 3rd about his life called John Lewis, Good Trouble. Good way to learn a little bit more about his history and his life and what motivated him to put his life on the line. We heard from a lot of people who participated in these marches saying that when you got involved, you had to be prepared to put your life on the line, and if you were not prepared to do so, then you shouldn't get involved, or you shouldn't get on the bus, or you shouldn't participate in this demonstration.
We're talking about a lot of parallels between the protests of 55 years ago and the protests we see today. Of course, we also have to look at this in the context of it was a completely different time. We did not have social media, and a lot of times you have some safety. I've heard from activists that if you go live on Facebook or live on Instagram or you have video proof, you didn't have that back then. Right. So they really were taking their lives in their own hands with, in some cases, without accountability to anyone else who might want to stop them from stopping them to do harm to them. And it takes a special kind of person like John Lewis to put quite literally their lives and their health and their safety on the line for really a greater good. And to push the country forward in a way that they see is best.
We see the procession getting closer to the bridge here, a number of buses, presumably carrying dignitaries that will participate in the ceremony that takes place. We are waiting for the horse-drawn carriage to get closer to the bridge. Now, again, there is a whole program that is scheduled to take place. We'll have remarks, we'll have musical selections, we'll have a prayer. And from here, the casket will be taken to the Alabama State Capitol.
In Montgomery.
Yeah, where he will lie in state there for several hours before moving on to Washington, D.C. Monday and Tuesday for another ceremony where he will lie in the Capitol Rotunda.
And that first bus right there, the sign on the front says family. So we presume that the family here, the buses are stopping. So what we can presume is that the family, friends, close personal friends of John Lewis will be exiting the buses here and then making the trip across the bridge on foot.
And it is of note here, so we pointed out that the rose petals they're on one side of the bridge, and the cars are not crossing on that side of the bridge, so
and
presumably that's the side of the bridge that the casket will probably
that is the side of the bridge that they crossed on. If you watch those old movies from 1965, they were crossing it on that one side of the bridge.
Yeah, it was film.
It was filmed back then, yeah.
Film.
You couldn't say video.
How long ago it was, yeah.
When we're looking at this, though, the amount of emotion, because John Lewis was quite a young man when this crossing happened, and he was really the youngest of that next wave of activists in the modern civil rights movement.
Yeah, but leading the way.
In carrying the torch. When you look at where he is, where he was at the end of his life, it makes you wonder what he thought about where his legacy was going to lead the country.
True.
And lead the other activists.
But the way he's been described as a humble man, you probably would think he was just doing the work he was put on the earth to do. You know, joining us right now is Illinois Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. She's joining us to talk about her time with Congressman John Lewis. Lieutenant Governor, are you with us?
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning. We are fine. Thank you for taking some time to speak with us this morning. And tell us about your connection with Congressman John Lewis.
Well, my connection with the congressman is twofold, really. Number one, I had the good fortune of meeting him in the Bronzeville community in Chicago, which is where I live, and he came to Bronzeville to talk about voting rights, actually, when I was a state representative, and I had the good fortune of meeting him and hearing his words about hope and why voting is so important and the work that he has done to fight for voting rights, and those certainly have been words that have continued to resonate in an age where we still continue to see voter suppression. But the other way that I am connected to him is that my father also made the trek from Selma to Montgomery and also marching for voting rights back in 1965. And while as he marched and tells me the story and continues to keep the legacy alive in terms of his own efforts to fight for equal justice under the law for all, I feel very privileged to hear stories from him about what it was like to march from Selma alongside, or at least as part of the same type of march that Congressman John Lewis was in.
So was he on the bridge with John Lewis on Bloody Sunday?
He was not on the bridge. My father actually told me that at the time there was a certain group of people. So everybody who marched did not cross that bridge. There was only a smaller subset of the marchers that were able to cross, Dr. King, John Lewis, and many others. But they all were there overnight as the small group crossed the bridge, and then they all gathered together to continue that march to Montgomery.
And as we honor the legacy of Representative Lewis, as a politician, what do you glean from his time in Congress, and do you take any of that as you move forward with your political career?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I watched his life and I listened to his words. You know, he was someone who said that when you see something that is wrong, you have to do something about it. And I think that we're living in a time right now where certainly we are seeing a lot of wrong as it relates to racial injustices, as we are seeing police brutality, as we are seeing disinvestment in so many communities, including black communities, which have suffered decades of disinvestment. John Lewis said, when you see these things, you have to do something about it. That, you know, people, that term good trouble is a great term, but what it really means is that you don't just sit on the sidelines. And so I think that this is a time where we need courageous leadership, as John Lewis has presented, and that's what I take from it, and that is what I will continue to try to do, is provide courageous leadership. I don't think we are living in the kinds of times where we can afford to be gentle with the leadership that we bring. We have to be bold, and we have to go after making sure that there are equal rights for everyone.
You weren't quite born when this original march happened across the Pettus Bridge, the original crossing. What can we take? We grew up in an era that was after the civil rights, the modern civil rights movement had begun. The Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act was signed. What more needs to be done in our lifetimes? Because I have a feeling that this is going to be a continuing process way past when we are laid to rest as well.
Well, first and foremost, let me just say, you're kind, but I was actually born that year of the march from Selma, and I think about that my father was marching in the year that I was born to bring equal rights and freedom to all. And as my dad told me recently, as we talked about John Lewis's life, he said, and I'm watching it still continue. So yes, there is a part that is a process, but at the same time, people are very much saying, and it's very much led by young people. As we know, John Lewis was very young when he was sitting in at lunch counters and protesting and focused on accountability. And so what I take from it is, first of all, understand the role of young people in every movement. I think number two, what I take from it is there are people who are saying right now, this is not a new fight, and we are impatient. We want to see equal justice, and we want to see it now. And I think the third thing that I really take from it is that we have to understand that when you have a moment in time like we have right now, where people all across the globe are professing that Black Lives Matter, people are looking for action, not just words. John Lewis was a man of action, and I think the thing that we have to take from it is it's not about phrases, it's not about tweets or hashtags. This is about action. We want real policy change, real legislative change that's going to really bring racial justice and equality for all.
In the mind of John Lewis, in his honor, in his legacy, what can people watching this right now do in those actions to make sure that his legacy continues on and the country begins more healing?
When John Lewis was crossing the bridge, which I know many people, and I agree, many people are calling for that bridge to be named in his honor instead of someone who was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. What I think that I take from it is that we have to vote. John Lewis was beaten, he was brutalized, and he kept marching, he kept fighting so that everyone could have access to the ballot and could vote. We are living in an age where there's voter suppression, where mass incarceration has caused entire groups of black and brown people to be disenfranchised, where there are voter ID laws and all sorts of things to keep people from access to the ballot and to getting the voting power, the power that they have, the political power that is in their hands. We have to make sure that we vote. We have to make sure that we keep raising our voices against injustice. And we have to recognize that now is not the time to sit on the sidelines. Now is the time to get up and do something. The only thing that John Lewis would say, don't do, is to just sit down and be silent.
And do nothing. We want to point out to everyone at home that the Brown Chapel is about a half-mile from the Edmund Pettus Bridge, so the horse-drawn carriage should be arriving shortly, according to Google, which is so helpful in times like this. It's about a 3-minute walk, so hopefully we shall be seeing that soon. What do you think young people are learning from? This is a living history lesson, I guess, for the young people who are out there fighting today.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, what I would say is that young people are teaching us a lot as well, and I think it's important for us to listen to our young people. But I think that we all are learning. You know, it struck me, and I know that, you know, we know this is the case around what is taught in the history books in our schools all across the country. But there are many people today who are saying, I am just now learning about John Lewis and his legacy. And that speaks to the fact that we need to pay attention to these leaders, many of whom have already gone before us, and take every opportunity to share as much information as we can. So because of social media and, of course, you know, programs like yours, you're taking the time to let people hear the story of John Lewis. And it's not just John Lewis, and it's not just Dr. Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks. There are so many freedom fighters, so many people who are part of our civil rights movement, whose names we often, you know, never know or never learned of. People like my dad, Henry Wiggins, who said that, you know, he was tired of reading about how human beings were being treated, and he said, what could I do? And he decided to stand up and be counted. He talked to me about how he could not go to Washington, D.C. when he was a high schooler for the class trip because, as he said, coloreds were not allowed. And seeing the colored only water fountains and bathrooms. So I think that it's a lesson to say that we need to tell the stories, even from our own families, and lift up the voices of people who might have been on the front lines or maybe behind the scenes, but still got us to this point. And I think it's something that young people and all of us really have to recognize the legacy that's being carried out as we see young people hit to the streets every single night in the wake of the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many more. The other thing that I would just say is that, you know, there are other things that we have to also focus on, things like the census. And when John Lewis talks about how every person matters and we have to lift up our voices, then completing the census is something that is happening right now, and that's another way that we can honor his legacy. So there's much to learn from Congressman Lewis, and John Lewis's legacy will continue to be something that motivates us, especially during a year that we are going to be voting. An important election is coming up. We know that people need to get their mail-in ballots because of COVID-19, and make sure that we honor his legacy by making sure that we cast our vote.
It makes me it makes me think back to our conversation with Dr. Adams earlier this morning, Lieutenant Governor, and about those young activists that we're seeing in the last 2 months, really powerful voices that you're hearing across the country, and that her reminder that it is not a sprint, this is a marathon to get to where you need to be. And John Lewis is one example of that. He spent his entire adult life fighting for rights.
Well, it's absolutely not a sprint. We didn't get here in a sprint. This is 400 years of, discrimination, oppression, segregation, things such as redlining and restrictive covenants, and all the other things that we have seen, mass incarceration. So many different issues have gotten us here. What I do know is that it cannot take another 400 years for us to get where we need to be in our country. The time is now for us to demand that there is real action and accountability. But it is a marathon. It is something that John Lewis let us know. He kept fighting. He did not stop in 1965, and here we are in 2020, still fighting for voting rights. So it requires the tenacity and the determination. But here's something else that John Lewis displayed over and over again, and that is hope. The hope that things can be better, the hope that this is not the end of the story, the hope that when people come together and are activated and are lifting up their voices and are hitting the streets and are demanding better for themselves and their communities, that things will in fact change.
Good
and
words
I think
to
that's
remember.
something that he showed us.
Good words to remember. Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, thank you so much for taking some time out today. Do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
The casket carrying the body of John Lewis has now arrived at the beginning part of the bridge. It's not going to cross right away. Again, there is a ceremony that is set to take place. So we're going to step away for a second and listen in as this ceremony continues.
Anybody from the funeral home is going to stay back on this side of the funeral home. So anybody from the funeral home. So on that side, on the side, all the way back. Right behind you. All right. Could you do me a big trip pass of that bag real quick? Yeah, that one. Appreciate it. I didn't want to get on. Thanks a lot. There you go, sir.
My hand's hot.
What?
My hand's hot.
You're gonna be. Don't, please.
Edmund Pettus Bridge one more time. This solemn ceremony culminates the work of a great man, a man who started out with humble beginnings, but by the grace of God, he ended up saving a nation and the world. Congressman John Lewis crosses the Edmund Pettus Bridge one more time. This time he is not bloody, he is not bowed, he is not dead, but instead he is in the bosom of his
All right, there you have it. Congressman John Lewis making his final crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
To think that he was 25 that day on Bloody Sunday. What a moving tribute.
55 years ago. Moving tribute. You know, as we heard, as his body was leading up to the bridge and then crossing, we heard people yelling out, "Thank you," clapping. We also heard the Negro spiritual, "We shall overcome." We also heard a reporter giving a report as he was coming across the bridge. They were talking about John Lewis's life and legacy, much of which steeped in the rights of people, just the basic human rights of people to be treated with dignity and have the respect that they deserve, and to have the right to vote,
to be kind,
and the right to actually be able to travel, as he was a freedom rider, being able to travel freely on public buses and trains and
one
such.
thing you heard about him time and time again is his kindness to others, and that is something that should also be his legacy, is that we should be kind to one another
and have hope. Hope for change. Here's an event, the schedule of events honoring the life of John Lewis. He will make his final crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, we just saw in a procession there, and he will lie in state at the Alabama State Capitol in Montgomery. That's about a 50-mile journey from where he is now. The public is allowed to pay tribute while wearing face coverings. A public viewing is scheduled for Monday and Tuesday in the Capitol Rotunda, and the final tributes are Wednesday and Thursday in Atlanta, where he will be buried. We want to thank you for spending the past hour with us as we mark this historic moment here as Congressman John Lewis makes his final crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama.
We'll continue to follow the journey now to Montgomery throughout the afternoon, have the latest as the country honors John Lewis tonight on our news starting at 5 o'clock.